Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick live stream for today, Tuesday, July 9th. If you're joining me for the very first time, first of all, welcome in. Second of all, this is how today's live stream will be structured. We'll be going over a recap, which seems like forever since we actually had a recap, unfortunately. But yesterday was pretty good overall. We'll go through that in just a minute. After that, we'll get moved over to the RotoWire page and take a look at any games that do have double-digit chance of rain for the weather report. Take a look at some of the starting lineups that have been announced so far and anything that is notable in the starting lineups. Then after that, we'll get moved over to FanDuel, talk about my core picks. It's going to be one pitcher, 4 hitters. It's going to be based on a combination of past performance versus their respective opponent, as well as some recent history. And then after that, we'll get moved over to my cheat sheet and talk about my top GPP teams to stack for tonight's slate overall. But without further ado, we're going to get into this recap. It's pretty exciting because we haven't had one in a while, and yesterday was pretty good in terms of the core picks. So at pitcher, we had Andrew Abbott, $9,500, got to 55 points. He was the top performing pitcher on yesterday's slate, so he was obviously a hit. At first base or third base, depending on where you played him at, Heimer Candelario, $3,000, got to 15.9, so he was a hit as well. His teammate, however, Jonathan India, $2,900, unfortunately went 0 for 4 yesterday, so he ended up with 0 points. He was a miss, the one lone miss on the day from the core picks yesterday. And then we had Brooks Lee, shortstop / third baseman, depending on where you played him at, $2,800, 16.2 points. He was a hit overall. And then last but not least, his teammate Byron Buxton, $3,200, got 24.9 points, and he was a hit as well. So a pretty exciting day altogether because we did have 4 hits, 1 miss. If you played a similar lineup to the one that I rolled out yesterday, had about 200 points, about 4 times entry return yesterday overall. So a pretty solid day altogether. So really can't complain there. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to RotoWire, talk about that weather report for today and some of those starting lineups that have been announced so far. So give me a second as I do bring up RotoWire here. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to drop them in the live chat, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible, popping them up, answering those questions. I am going to probably refresh this page because I think it's been a couple of minutes since I have had it up. So there may be a couple starting lineups that we haven't seen yet. In terms of weather, I believe there's 3 games now that we're watching. We do have an update from earlier in the day already. That Kansas City and St. Louis game has been postponed. That game will not be happening today. It's not on the slate. Do not play any of those players, although I think if you're playing on FanDuel, it has them like kind of grayed out where you can't even select them either way. So not really too worried about that. The one change from kind of my notes, my research from last night, is Nick Lodolo is going to end up starting for the Cincinnati Reds tonight. Frankie Montas was in the cheat sheet as kind of like the pay down option at pitcher. Feel free to replace him with Jose Quintana if that's something you were looking to do in terms of paying down at pitcher tonight. Looks like a pretty favorable matchup for Quintana. And, this Nationals lineup that they're rolling out tonight's not all that impressive altogether. But in terms of the weather report that I do have for today, or that we do have for today, we're going to scroll down to the Colorado Rockies and the Cincinnati Reds out in Cincinnati, 79% chance of rain. And that one even went up since I got home and wrote down 57% chance. It's even gotten worse than that. So we'll keep an eye on that one. We'll see whether or not it ultimately ends up going off. Next game up was the New York Mets, 16% chance of rain going against those Nationals tonight. Do expect that game ultimately ends up going off. And then the other one that is concerning today is going to be over in Chicago with the White Sox and the Twins, 78% chance of rain there. That is definitely going to be one that we're keeping an eye on. I do like Eric Fetty tonight. He's got decent history versus the Twins in the past. Do like some of the White Sox hitters, like some of the Twins hitters here and there too as well. But I don't think this game is going to ultimately end up going off, or if it does, we have a high chance of like a delay or, like it raining in the middle of the game and anything else like that. So probably just going to avoid this game and the Cincinnati and Colorado games tonight overall, just with that high 70% chance of rain in both those games overall. And then in terms of the starting lineups, we'll scroll all the way back up to the top just so that we have those. I know there's a couple that have come in since I wrote down my notes, but the Oakland A's and the Boston Red Sox, pretty standard lineups for both these teams at this point in time. Lawrence Butler's been playing a little bit more for the Oakland A's, although he really hasn't hit worth a crap this year. And Brett Harris is at third base, so not really too much to write home about there. Colorado and Cincinnati, if that game ultimately does end up going off, we do see Hunter Goodman playing right field, batting ninth once again for the Colorado Rockies. I think he hit 8th yesterday, but not really writing too much home about that. On the Cincinnati side, we see Reese Hines getting a second career start. Edwin Diaz starting once again tonight. So pretty similar lineup to last night. And then Moving over to the Washington Nationals. So there's one notable thing that I'll just say here. It's just Nick Senzel's not in the lineup, and Trey Lipscomb's playing third base today. Senzel was one of the few guys that does have pretty decent history versus Jose Quintana. Lane Thomas would be another one. And then we got Harold Ramirez DH and hitting fourth for them overall against the lefty, which typically he's done pretty well against in his career, but I think it's a little bit risky here at that. I still definitely do like that upside of Jose Quintana tonight. Mets lineup, pretty standard-ish for what we've seen as of late. We move down to the Twins and the White Sox. So the only one here really for the Twins is that Manuel Margot's playing center field. He's batting eighth tonight. There is no Byron Buxton in this lineup. So Manuel Margot is actually one of the few Twins hitters that has hit Eric Fedde well. If this game ultimately ends up going off, he's 2 for 4 versus him in his career. Most of these guys don't have a long list of history versus him either way, though. And then on the White Sox side, not too much to write home about here. I think it's kind of interesting, as a White Sox fan, that Sosa's playing second base now. DeYoung's playing third base. Nicky Lopez has moved over to shortstop, kind of shuffling around the positions there, but not really too much otherwise to write home about. And then we have the Pittsburgh Pirates lineup. This is one that was recently announced. Pretty standard-ish lineup, minus the exclusion of O'Neal Cruz here. So we have no O'Neal Cruz. We have no Andrew McCutchen tonight. Jared Trujillo is going to play shortstop. We do see Palacios Leonoff playing right field. If you're getting to many guys from the Pirates, the guys that have decent history in the past versus Colin Ray is going to be Nick Gonzalez and Jack Sawinski. Those are the two in this starting lineup that do, as well as Brian Reynolds. So those would be the three from Pittsburgh if you're getting anybody from that side. Then on the Brewers side, we're still waiting on that starting lineup. I do like the Brewers as a team to stack tonight, though. And then we move over to the Miami Marlins, Houston Astros. I would say these are pretty standard-ish lineups for these two teams. Nothing too crazy to write home about here at this point in time. Then it looks like we got a couple of late ones since I last looked. I'm going to scroll down just to the last game to see if there was any there. But we do have the 3 lineups for the late game slate tonight overall. And we start off with the Angels. Anthony Rendon did come back yesterday, so that is something notable. He's hitting leadoff. I think he's still pretty cheap on FanDuel too. So there is maybe some potential upside there. It's against Max Scherzer. We don't really know what we're getting out of Max Scherzer at this point in time, but most of these Angels hitters haven't hit him pretty well in the past. I believe there was 2 guys that have, and one was Luis Guillermo, who's not starting tonight, and then the other one I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't think they're starting either. So not really too interested in this Angels team overall. Obviously, that lineup's kind of interesting as of late. They have Keston Hiura playing now on their team. They've had a lot of different names, a lot of former top prospects that really haven't panned out on their team at this point in time. And then we move over to San Diego Padres, just looking through this lineup real quickly. It's a pretty standard-ish lineup for the Padres. And then over for the Arizona Diamondbacks, we did get this one as well. Just kind of looking through it real quick as we move through it. I would say maybe the one notable exclusion is no, Randall Grichuk is starting, so I won't even say him. I was thinking because he's got decent history versus him in the past, but pretty standard-ish lineup for the Diamondbacks versus the left-handed pitcher. Alek Thomas did recently return as well. And then we got Kevin Newman starting at shortstop. No Perdomo tonight, so not really too much to write home about there. We're going to wrap this up real quick. We're going to get over to FanDuel, talk about those core picks for tonight's slate. So once again, the core picks are going to be based on a combination of past performance versus their respective opponent, as well as some recent history. So let me get FanDuel brought up, and we'll be talking through that. So at the pitcher position, we're going to go with Logan Gilbert. He goes against the San Diego Padres tonight. He's got pretty good history versus them in the past, although it still is some pretty limited history at that. Pretty strong start to the year for him, averaging about 36 fantasy points per game. ERA under 3 at this point in that time at 2.91. 5 wins on the season. It's $10,200, so he's up there in price tag, but I definitely think the upside is warranted, and the price tag is warranted, and there is some upside there for him. He had 67 and 46 points versus the Padres last season, so some pretty decent history, some pretty decent upside to be had there at that. Definitely do like getting to Logan Gilbert tonight. I think a lot of people are probably going to be going to like Chris Sale, maybe a couple other guys here and there, but Logan Gilbert would be my favorite tonight. After him, Eric Fedde looks pretty up in the air if he's going to play tonight or not. So I'd probably be on Jose Quintana as my second favorite pitcher overall if you're looking to pay down at that pitcher position. And then with that being said, we're going to get down to our hitters. So I will say a lot of these teams that I do like to stack overall tonight are teams that either don't have a lot of history versus their opposing pitcher, no history at all, or pretty much something similar to that. So we're going to start off at the catcher position with William Contreras, $3,200. Quinn Priester is the expected primary pitcher tonight, I should say. It sounds like they're going to use an opener for him. He's going to be like the multi-inning reliever, probably most of the innings for them tonight, unless, things go really poorly. And William Contreras, 2 for 6 versus him in his career. He has at least one hit in 3 out of his last 4 games, 2 multi-hit games during that time span. Unfortunately, no home runs. Does have 1 double-digit performance and 2 games of at least 9 fantasy points. So a lot of my picks today are going to be based more kind of on past history, as well as some guys that I like putting in some stacks today. Just in general, some of the recent history, maybe not quite as strong as they would be on a traditional slate. But definitely do like the upside of William Contreras tonight. The batting average is slowly under 300 now. It's at 297, 10 home runs, 51 RBIs, averaging just over 11 fantasy points per game at $3,200. Looks like a pretty decent price tag for him tonight. Definitely do like the upside that he could have overall. Then at second base, we're going to go with his teammate at the exact same price tag in Bryce Terang. He is $3,200. We'll see ultimately where he ends up hitting in the lineup. They do have him projected 9th, but it would be nice to see him potentially in that leadoff spot. We'll see what that looks like as the Brewers announce their lineup, but he has some pretty decent history in the past. Versus Quinn Priester, unfortunately, I didn't write that down for whatever reason. I think it's 2 for 5 versus Quinn Priester, if my memory does solve me correctly. And he has at least 1 hit in 5 out of his last 6 games. 1 multi-hit game during there. So that's kind of the downfall. 0 home runs. Obviously, he's not that big of a power hitter overall, but a guy that can definitely steal a base, guy that can definitely get on base at the same time as well. And he's had 3 double-digit performances during that, 5 hit performance during the 6 games as well. So definitely do like the upside of him tonight overall. It feels like a pretty safe floor play overall. Might have a little bit of upside if he gets on base, if he steals the base, if he happens to knock one over the wall. Then you start really talking as a good play overall. He's got a 288 average on the season, 6 home runs, 38 RBIs, obviously a handful of stolen bases as well. Then we are going to keep moving down to the outfield now. We're going to start off with Jorge Soler at $3,000. Not the greatest season for Jorge Soler to start off, but he's got some pretty good history versus Yusei Kikuchi in the past. 3 for 8 with 2 home runs versus him in his career. He's got at least 1 hit in 6 out of his last 8 games. 2 of those games have been multi-hit games. 1 home run during that time span. 4 double-digit performances. So that's kind of the upside with him at that point in time. And then 5 of those games have been at least 9 fantasy points or higher. So we do have kind of a safe-ish floor with Jorge Soler, unless he goes over, but definitely do like the history versus Yusei Kikuchi in the past and kind of the upside that could be with Jorge Soler on any given slate and given the past history. But with that being said, he's got a 224 average, 10 home runs, 32 RBIs on the season, averaging about 9 fantasy points per game at $3,000. Fairly priced at this point in time, but definitely do like chasing some of that upside with him tonight overall. Obviously, if he's a guy that you don't want to play, you can obviously switch him for someone else. And that same thing can be said about our last player in JJ Bleday. So JJ Bleday, it's been a rough little stretch for him as of late. I will say that. So I'm not even going to talk about how many hits he's got in the last 3 or 4 games or anything else like that. It's just been really rough as of late, which has brought his average down to 234, 11 home runs, 31 RBIs, averaging over 8 fantasy points per game at $2,800. However, the history versus Brian Bayo, although it is pretty limited, is very, very good. So he's 2 for 4 with 2 home runs versus Brian Bayo in his career. Brian Bayo this season, very, very hit or miss. And in his career versus the Oakland A's, quietly has been pretty disastrous. So we'll see what that looks like ultimately tonight. If you want to go with a sneaky A stack, you could definitely do that. But JJ Bleday, based on the past history, is somebody that I do like, although he is in a little bit of a slump at this point in time. So once again, if you want to swap him out to somebody else, definitely do understand that. But with that being said, if you go with the 5 players that I do currently have listed here, you will have you will have $12,600 remaining, just over $3,100 per player. So a decent amount of money left over. If you want to go balance bill, it's pretty easy to do that on tonight's slate overall. If you want to pay up for a couple star players, maybe you want to pay up for Christian Yelich and put that in your Brewer stack, definitely makes some sense. Can pay down at some other spots as well. Some potential values out there on tonight's slate overall. But with that being said, But with that being said, we'll get moved over to my cheat sheet and talk about my top GPP teams to stack for tonight's slate overall. So let me get that brought up as we're talking through it over here. So that would be this tab. And the 4 teams that I do have in terms of the stacks for tonight, keep in mind, on any given slate, you can stack anyone you want. And with stacks, these are not always guaranteed to hit. These are just ones that I do like based on matchup, based on some of the history in the past. Although I will say 3 of the 4, there's not that much history out there. So I'm going to start off with the Houston Astros, and they are going against Trevor Rogers. They do have very limited history versus him in the past. Mauricio Dubon, is like the one lone guy that's got pretty decent history versus him, if I recall correctly. They have a couple other guys that faced him before in the past, but nothing too crazy there at that. So definitely do like some of that upside there with them. Obviously, most of the Astros are pretty reasonable priced at this point in time. Let me go back and look. I can't remember if Yordan Alvarez was starting tonight or not. I know he's been dealing with a little bit of a knee soreness issue, so he is in that starting lineup. So definitely feel free to run him out there tonight. Don't mind the lefty on lefty matchup with Trevor Rogers, who's been very, very hit or miss once again this season. And then we have the Seattle Mariners going against the San Diego Padres. Adam Mazur is the expected starter for them. Kind of a sinker ball pitcher, not a guy that gets a lot of strikeouts, which is kind of the one detriment for the Seattle Mariners. And Mazur's has not been that great so far to start off his young career. I believe it's his 7th career start. ERA is up over 7 at this point in time, so a lot of upside for this Mariners lineup tonight. They have no history versus them in the past, but there is a lot to write home about there. And then after that, we get the Milwaukee Brewers. They probably have the most history, and that's not even that much history versus Quinn Priester. So definitely do like Christian Yelich. We like Bryce Terang. We like William Contreras. Sal Frelick's got some pretty decent history and a home run versus Quinn Priester if you want to roll him out as well. Definitely a lot of ways that we can approach this Brewers team overall. Obviously, a lot of that may still depend on what that starting lineup looks like as that does come out. And then last but not least, we have the Texas Rangers going against Rosani Contreras. I believe they have no history versus him in the past. Obviously, he's a guy that came over from the Pirates. He's a former prospect that was thought to be all right, but hasn't really shown too much in his young MLB career. Has been a little bit better as a reliever, but he is expected to eat at least the early innings of this game. Has not gone deeper than like 3 1/3 innings since he's kind of entered their starting rotation. So might end up being a little bit more of a bullpen game, which I definitely do like the Texas Rangers for in that situation. But with that being said, that's kind of the quick little rundown in terms of the recap for yesterday, in terms of the weather report and looking through some of the starting lineups that we do have available. We'll try to list some other ones down in the comments as they do get announced throughout the night. So definitely be sure to check out down there as well for that and some weather updates. If anything other changes, like in terms of players getting scratched, pitchers getting scratched, anything else like that, we'll try to list that as well. If anybody does have any last minute questions before we get out of here, feel free to drop them down. Otherwise, probably be here for about a minute and a half more, kind of running through, the normal spiels. So if you are brand new to my channel, checking out for the very first time or have yet to do so, would greatly appreciate it if you do subscribe to the channel if you like the content that I am putting out. Obviously, still getting used to this live stream type of structure. So I will have a couple more, fumbles over my words and everything else like that in this structure as opposed to a pre-recorded video, but definitely do appreciate you guys bearing with me, being flexible in this situation and kind of supporting and supporting me just in general and kind of just embracing this live stream format. Once again, do appreciate anyone that is watching, and anyone that does ask any questions as well. If you are unfamiliar, I am doing this MLB DFS live stream Monday through Friday, 4:30 Central Time, 5:30 Eastern Time. Obviously, if there is an early slate, I will unfortunately be unable to do that on those days just because of the new job that I did start. That's obviously why we switched over to the live stream format. If you are interested in CFL DFS at all whatsoever, I do have my CFL DFS video, which will be going up tomorrow for week number 6 over there. Definitely be sure to check it out. CFL DFS. It might not sound that fun to some of you guys out there or some of you gals out there, but it is actually pretty fun to play. There is a lot of different scoring there. If you're used to kind of how NFL is scored for DFS, you actually do get some yardage. You do get some points for kick return yardage as well. So definitely feel free to check that out if that's something you're into as well, or just want to check out for the very first time. But with that being said, that's pretty much what I do kind of have planned for today's video. As always, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for BetUS, Parlay Play, and Prize Picks if you're interested in that. When you sign up, make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For parlay play, Prize Picks, it's 100% match up to $100. And then for BetUS, it's 125% match up to $2,500 on your first 3 deposits. So definitely feel free to check those sites out. If you have any questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comments of this live stream, in the live chat, or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. I'd be more than happy to help you with that journey. Helps you guys out a little bit as you get started with that journey. Helps me out a little bit on the side as well. But with that being said, that's pretty much what I do have for today's stream. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you that did tune in to help support this stream. Definitely means a lot to me. If you have any other additional questions whatsoever, feel free to drop them down in the comment section of this live stream and replay, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Also be looking out for some of the starting lineups and weather updates down there as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for today's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in once again. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your night and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight as well.